Hello and welcome to 3D character modeling during game prototyping. This is for modelers that have been trained in the art of doing character animation models, or people that have been doing any type of modeling that have just joined a video game group and are wondering what to do during this thing called prototyping, or as I call it, what to do and what do you do so you don't have to redo what you done did. So let's move on. So for those of you interested in pre-production, please keep in mind that prototyping the character models is a crucial part of any game's evolution. So I'd love to break the mythology that you're simply in a holding pattern waiting for the final character design, waiting by the phone, waiting for marching orders. You are instead immediately part of the game project family and its development. So please lean into that, embrace it, and help out. Also, the experience of doing this, sometimes it's just never covered in a character modeling or modeling class because it really is more of an emergent bit of business when you are on a team to reach a deadline that is an amalgam of different talents. Originally in a classroom, sometimes your assignment is to merely hand in a character model or some finished bit of work. Textured, modeled, done very well. Obviously, a lot of work goes into it, but the idea of prototyping is not really inherently part of that as much as it is when you're on a video game team. And so helping out and knowing how to do this is going to be value and savings and skill sets that flow to you, because number 2 point, any artist who knows how to help set up their own pipeline is invaluable in the industry. They are people that are sort of take charge. Let me set up a test. Let me prototype. I think I know some tests that would be really helpful for this process because I've looked at it from the 10,000-foot view and I know what this needs. And I'll give specific examples as we go along in the talk. So this period of turnaround, number three point, is about setting up quick systems and determining the character needs. And you think immediately you know what that is, but it's about actually stepping away from the computer and thinking about the game and asking these questions. And ultimately, of course, it's going to help you build the final model, not just in your new position of knowing more about the game, but it will reduce the amount of rework time that you have to do because you're working alongside the team. So this sounds good, okay, but we have no approved concept art or a finished game idea. It was a game idea, but it's just kind of an idea. So what do I do? Well, you still know some basic things about the game. So number 1 point is that you know whether it's a runner, you know whether it's a fighting game, you know whether it's a platformer. You kind of get an idea about the genre. So that's probably not going to change 180 degrees in the course of the game development. You have a certain degree of clarity that that's going to stay the way that is. Whether something is a multiplayer, it involves crowds, or it's a solo experience is also very telling about a game. And whether something is cartoony or realistic or semi-realistic. These are opposite ends of the spectrum that you're going to be investigating, as well as the kind of basic idea of what the camera distance is. Is it right over the character's shoulder? Are you speaking through the character? Do you have the God's eye view that's popular in so many different games, just showing you within the greater environment? So this is about, even as a modeler, identifying what the character does. Start that conversation with the art lead. Start that conversation with the designer. And it will help you kind of figure out the systems that the character needs. Don't expect other people to have all the answers for you. You are part of this process. It is invaluable. Please help out. Everybody on the team is discovering what exactly this game is about. So always start low res. I still see people starting with ZBrush work or a really impressive model, and they're detailing it. They're putting lips and eyebrows and all kinds of stuff on it before you've even given them a low-res character to determine basic things like the camera distance, whether it's a God's eye view, 3/4 view over the shoulder. So always start low-res, not detail. These are 2 examples of characters I've built, and the one on the left is used right in the mobile game, and the one on the right is a cinematic character. But you'd be surprised how often people start with a wireframe so dense it just comes off as a big block of color. So long before you get to the detailing, you actually need to first learn what the game really needs. Both of these, mummy character, cartoony, ghoulish, but the second is an example of actually vetting it through the game process. So 4 goals for the 3D modeler in any game pipeline is 4 things that will help them immensely in determining the final needs of this game. And this involves setting up a base model. So kind of a ragdoll. Some people call it a ragdoll model. Some people call it the original model. I just call it a base model. To set up to determine proportions, color palette, the readability, and character systems. So step 1, the proportions. If you just make this base model for a main character, maybe it's the main character, maybe it just, if it's an ensemble piece, you want kind of a main character. Understand this is not to be done as a final anything. This is something that will be your elastic clay in the game. You'll be cutting, moving, manipulating this model in the evolution of the team with the game. So the base model you build may in fact become the final model. It's not complete throwaway, or it may not. But right now the job is to determine these 4 previously mentioned factors to give you enough information to, with great confidence, go forward in the final character model. Prepare for a conversation with the team with this, not just a linear assignment. I need this character, here's a concept art, you came back with it, we're done. That's just not the relationship anymore. This is one of being much more integrated with the family of the game project and having input. So this is meant to be set up as something that allows you very fast turnaround in the game, meaning you can change it, put it in the game, see what it looks like in the game, change it ever so slightly again, rinse, repeat until it looks like it should in the game. This skill set, again, makes you an invaluable professional in a professional production team. I cannot emphasize that enough. I mentioned it a couple times, along with some other points in this that I think are very important. So look, grab a free online model close to your character description if you don't have one. If you have one in your arsenal already that'll do, grab it, go with it. When I say learn sculpting, every 3D modeling software worth its salt has some sort of a sculpting that you can do, whether it's grabbing a isoparm or a circle in the leg and scaling it and affecting its neighbors using soft select, or you've got actually sculpting paintbrushes within the 3D software. Maya has both of these, and I go over those briefly in this talk as well. You should be aware that this is going to be sculpting, so you don't need to start with something that looks perfect. You need to start with something that is kind of the general neighborhood of what you're talking about. So you'll need a biped if it's humanoid. You need a quadruped if it's some sort of an animal, etc. And so just get ready to sculpt it, export it, see it in the game, resculpt, etc. The advantage of grabbing a model that's already built is the UVs tend to already be sorted and they're ready for textures. I give 2 links to places online. I'm sure you can find many more. Basic proportions. Please do not deliver a high-res, high-dense anything. This should be very simple, and I'm showing the wireframes because this is the kind of stuff you should be exporting into the game upon first pass. Cartoony or realistic or semi-realistic is exactly what you can determine at this point. Get ready to reshape, don't rebuild. And of course, don't re-rig it again, because this model is meant to be reshaped and quickly re-exported into the game, and go over those steps until you are much closer to what the character looks like. So there's no reason to detail the model. Here's a great example of why you want to prove your pipeline immediately. You don't want to wait till you're done with all this gorgeous stuff. Export it into the game. And you should be getting with your art lead, who should know how to put it in the game. If they don't, they need to learn very quickly. And you can both learn through your lead engineer. Take some of their time, front load, get them to record a little how-to tutorial and give it to you to onboard others later. But everybody should have a certain autonomy about how to export things into the game and view it locally on their machine to see if it works. So understand the build folder structure, understand the SVN commits, and this allows you to quickly spot major problems with simple meshes before any detailing, such as, in this case, scale. Step number 2, the palette. Color your base model. Okay, once you're done with the first exports of kind of proportions, you need to block out basic swaths of color on the character. By the way, I go down these steps 1 through 4 in a linear fashion. These are ones you can constantly circle back to number 1. This again this is a process by which these 4 things are determined, not necessarily in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, but these 4 things need to be determined to help you understand the final game model. So when I say step number 2, I don't mean you're done and will never return to reshaping. I mean that you should get it out of the way at some point so you can return to it. So color the polygons. There's no need for UV arrangement when it's just coloring polygons. You can use vertex shading if you want to go that direction, or if the engineering has chosen that direction. You can paint over the UVs for simple textures. Of course, you'll need the UVs sorted out in that way. Set it up so you can rework the colors quickly. What you might want to do is actually attribute different materials to different polygons: flesh, clothing, torso color, hair color, if you're going to be revisiting those many times. Maya has a 3D paint system to paint right on the model. And Maya can also immediately update saved PSD files. If you've got Photoshop open on the right hand of your screen or screens, and you've got Maya simultaneously open that is whose character is referencing a PSD file for its textures, you can set it up within Maya under Settings, Images, Reload to immediately update models, textures the minute you save them from Photoshop. Really nice stuff. So even if you have a sketch or silhouette, this allows you to build and color a model base body. The job here is not for you to think that this is a measure of your talent. This is in service to getting other people moving quickly. So please don't balk at this. This is something anyone should be able to set up within 20 minutes. Coloring a couple of cubes, maybe 15, maybe 10. But get the major body parts and make a new cube when there's a joint. So you'd have one for the forearm, one for the bicep area, one for the hand, things like that. This looks probably very silly to people, but take a look here. This lets your animator and engineers get going while you start a better model. So even putting things together, please understand that if people are waiting on you, no matter how good you make the model look, it's bad that they're waiting on you. It's good if you say, you know what, while I'm working on my better res model, here's a block character that matches the concepts fairly accurately that can get you going. So this works for, say, a little basketball game, and you can see the characters put together on the right using very flatly colored court side areas that are gray. The hoop itself is red, because the point of this is to show people with clarity where things are. And if you go into Maya, you can actually see here that a block character is something that an animator can animate very well, and it communicates the point of the game, so you're not holding anybody back. You can even switch to something else and go for a walk. So I'm able to actually kind of tell the visual communication of this character pretty quickly just using blocks. So you're freeing up the engineer and the others to get going. They're not waiting on you, which is really, again, the point. So please understand that this is all about letting other people move on while you then return and make your model look even better. And the feedback you get by seeing these blocks, showing these blocks in game, is going to come back to you as a modeler as well. People can say, well, we really need the hands bigger. We just don't see them. The game's camera is always at this kind of God's eye view. It's a mobile game. We just need things like the head and the hands to be bigger. And they only determine that by seeing these blocks in game. That saves you time, because now you know the size at which you need to be modeling the character's body. So this will help you, and it'll help you build and texture a better model over time, especially if you're saving it in the same place in the folder so that your updates are invisible to the rest of the audience, the rest of the team. And anybody looking at this game does an SVN update, and they suddenly, over the course of the project, start seeing progressively superior models. It's a real lovely high for everybody. Step 3 is readability. Exporting and judging your main character. And I want to underline this. I am a big fan of all artists getting technical enough to understand how to upload SV through version control or SVN right into the game project. I do it myself. It allows me a lot of autonomy, and it's no more technically scary than learning Photoshop or a 3D program. So understand the directory structure for where your character is going to be. This is exactly the priming you need to get a job in the industry. They will have a version control system. They will want you to learn the folder structure. If you know how to do this, again, that goes in your wheelhouse of talents you can offer to get hired. So sit down and make sure you understand, along with the art lead, who should know as well, how to do commits and go through it a few times. Make mistakes. Learn how to do this up front so you can fix those mistakes, so you can roll back mistakes, which is what you can do with any good version control. And this, most importantly, lets you export and test your character work right in the game on your local computer before you upload it to the hive mind. So this also gets artists away from looking in their chosen 3D program. I teach Maya. I'm used to Maya. But whether you're looking at it in any different software, I've seen people time and time again say, this looks great, I'm done. But the truth is, even when things are finished and looking good, it's not actually looking good until you export it and you see it in the game. So this is obviously not a game I've worked on, but it does show the modeler, look, don't worry about the belt buckle. You don't see it. Don't worry about the gold line hem of the pants. No one's going to see it. What you do need to worry about is kind of the top of the head, the expressions, top of the shoulder, saturate that, kind of put everything down into a darker color as it goes down the body. All that stuff is best informed by seeing it in the game. And a little cheat you can use if you don't have a build is to render out from your software a PNG file and just comp it right over a screenshot of your background. So that's a nice cheat for you to understand the view. I cannot tell you the exact number, but I know it's a heartbreaking number of the amount of students I've seen try to put together a great game, and they have these luxurious models that took a while, and then they see it in game and it is 1/10 of the size they were working in, and they feel like, oh my god, you don't see any of the detail. But that should have been apparent to the modeler much early on, because the modeler should have been importing it, seeing what the view was, and making changes according to what the player sees, not according to what they see with the character much closer in the 3D software. So your tests ultimately will inform you best, and the team, what you really need to upgrade in your final model. So this is one on the left, obviously it's got 300 polys total, and this is one on the right that I was informed by what needs changing over time. Step 4, and this is the most ignored part I've seen from character modeling. And I really want to emphasize this because it is so empowering to any character modeler, or really to any artist, to help join testing the game's needs. There is no singular person within the group that knows everything. This is a journey of exploration, and engineers, designers, the people designing the UI, playtesters even, all of them are currently trying to figure the game out by doing tests. You are no less important. So please step up and do these tests and join the team, because it's not only going to help you, it's going to help the team. So what I mean by character systems is talk with the art lead and understand what the game is about. Like, where do you go from level to level? What does the player do? What is their challenge? Not so much in a story, but in a series of visuals. And extrapolate systems from that. So for instance, this is all about a spy game where you have to find someone in a crowded subway. Or what that means, technically, crowds. And that means that you could go the route of the same character with slight variations, that you need to work on libraries of heads and bodies to trade out to mix and match, so you can make a crowd of hundreds of people from maybe 10 original models of different heads and bodies, or at least bring that system up as something that yourself and the engineer and the game designer have to work out. Leveling up. Someone gets the golden chalice, the golden ticket. There's usually a texture or a model change. Something, some particle system comes in and goes bring, and suddenly you've got gold edging on your lapels or something, saying you've leveled up. That also needs to be prepped for, especially if it's very important in the game that a player visually see what level they're at any minute, as well as their opponents. So that's various textures for the body or parts of body. You could have, a magical hat that pops in and off. But this stuff cannot be thought of as an afterthought later on. It's actually integral to the character system. So this is what I mean by systems. Even the often overlooked external props for a character. Swords, guitars, rakes, cans of soda, pots, food in their hand. If this is non-deforming, then the engineer needs to pop these on and off in bones in the hand. Other examples come from just naturally thinking about the game. So I've grabbed some games here. Some just random cool little games whose names shall remain as I've named them. Most games have some sort of system that affects the characters. You need to help discover it by knowing the progression of the game. So for a game that is about a musical game where you get in fights called a singin' and a punchin', well, you fight the crowds. Okay, well, the character system then is crowds. Do you need to mix match heads bodies? What is our system for doing that? For a game about going running cross country, it's cross country Jones. Well, it's real-time skiing. Aha, well, it's cross-country skiing. Well, then we have a composite of canned animation in the upper torso and real-time calculation of the terrain from the torso down. So animated pose plus real-time. Those tests need to be in the game very soon. And it does not need a good-looking model, and it doesn't need custom animation to test anything out. Another game where you run around and use yourself as bait for a monster is Hallway Monster, and it's all about monster pursuit. But because of the description of what you do in game of self as bait, your visibility needs to be 360 degrees of clarity. And that's going to constantly go back and forth of the shifting cameras and the layout, and that's going to inform how close you get to the character. Does the camera stay far away except for when the character gets close and says something? All of this needs to be worked out, so think of your job as a robot technician that needs to know about systems. So absorb the game not as a magical experience that you're an audience member to, but think about it as someone making a checklist of the systems to execute on those. So other examples is external props is used as part of the character, and I mentioned swords, food, trash, litter, whatever. It needs an engineering solution. Figuring this stuff out earlier is so much better. So for example, I bring up something that I worked on in a little basketball game. And rather than having the solution, some people would say, I think it would, some people might just say, oh, it's physics, because a real ball is physics, so that's the answer. Well, that is fraught with problems when you try to implement it. The solution that was the simplest one that we found was simply making the ball part of the rig. So it's really on the animator to animate the ball dribbling up and down in the character's hands. And it was taken care of. You simply play the canned animation where the bones of the character started at 0, 0, 0, the bottom of the floor, and a separate bone came out and actually guided the ball. But the animation as a whole played constantly. The only time we switched is when the ball was leaving the tips of the character's fingers during a layup. At frame, let's say 14, was the last frame you saw the ball on that character's fingertips. Frame 15, we popped that ball 10 feet below the character so it magically, air quotes here, disappeared. And instead, we popped on a ball that had a parabola curve on it. So people thought the animated ball suddenly leapt into the air and went towards the basket, whereas the truth is we used a sleight of hand because we realized the player didn't see the switch, certainly on a mobile game, and it was the best possible solution with the least amount of variables. If you introduce physics, you have a whole panoply of things to fix and problems. So we adopted a parabola curve, not physics. We adopted the ball being part of the rig, not physics. So figuring these systems out when the character is all largely just blocks is so much easier than stressing out at the last minute because problems arise. Other examples is if you separate materials and or models on the same character, it allows quick variety and very quick change. So here you have the same character's face with various hair and hats, and you have different shaders here, so you can actually change the hair and the skin color without changing the shirt color. You can even use the same texture with different proportioned models like you see on this head here, or modular hair for crowds. Mirrored UVs, if you build the characters so that they're mirrored, means painting only half the space. So you don't have to paint the whole character over and over again, you'll have to paint half. And it can go throughout their entire wardrobe. So there's that as an advantage. Maya tools you may not know about is that you can actually use projections from the concept artist right onto the model. There are some caveats. You do have to set this up a certain way. You can't just come in later and go, how do you do that magic? You got to understand how it works, and I've given you a link to a small little lecture I did about how to use it. 3D paint as well, a little lecture here. You can paint right on an object. Of course, there's caveats. Don't assume anything by just charging ahead and going, oh, I heard in a lecture that there's this magic pill, so I'll just circle back later and ask him about it. No, please take the half hour just to watch this and understand the limitations it has. Set it up and try it yourself. These projections, again, concept art can be projected and baked onto the textures for the model if they are drawn over the model screenshot. You can quickly switch out textures or update textures this way, but you do need to understand how it works in Maya. It is not a button, it's a setup. So your 4 goals for the 3D modeler in the game pipeline: you need to set up the proportions, the color palette, the readability, the character systems. And this is a journey of discovery where once you get to 4, you go back to 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 1, sometimes 4 again, but you save yourself and the team so many headaches. And you need to understand the game to really understand the systems that the character needs. This will affect the folder structure, the team communication, the fact that many artists are working asynchronously, and it allows for constant automated upgrades to the game. Questions? Which is a silly thing to ask. Of course there aren't going to be questions. This is a linear movie. All right. If you have any questions, get a hold of me either in class or via email. Other than that, buena suerte, and let's have a great game. Take care.